the top 10 interview questions according to ChatBPT, or as I like to call him, ChatGPT. And we're on question 5.
We are. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, we're trying to stick to the egg timer.
Yeah, we're not. We're ignoring
minutes,
it.
Which means we normally run to 15 because one of our
best.
weaknesses is sticking to time.
That is my strength. It's just I have a very dilute understanding of time.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I tend to think if a company asks me that, my answer will be presumably not with you. Because
Not here, mate.
yeah, it's just it would be just assuming that everything goes according to plan. First started by assuming that I have a fucking plan, and that everything goes according to it. Like life doesn't happen. You just follow exactly the strict chapters you've already pre-decided on. So I just find it's a really impossible question to answer.
I feel like from an interviewer point of view, like certainly in the tech industry, maybe 5-10 years ago you could have said turnover for average retention for people, turnover was about 3 to 5 years, maybe 2 to 5, somewhere in there. That slowly decreased.
Oh yeah,
and certainly
everywhere else
over
as well.
COVID, we saw retention go down to about 18 months for anyone staying in a role, and I don't think it's bounced back up that high. Maybe 2 years, 18 months, 2 years at a push. So this, like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? For me, is a question from 1982 or something. It's like where people stay at a company for 15 years and they just work through and progress through slowly. And again, it's one of these which for me, I don't know what you're supposed to answer. You're either supposed to go in with false bravado and say, yeah, I'm going to be CEO, and they say, no, you're not, because that's my job. Or, I don't know, I'm going to be doing the same job, but maybe slightly senior. It's kind of... So the way I use a similar question now in technical interviews, because I think what this is trying to get to from an interviewer point of view is some long-term view about whether you've thought further than the next 5 minutes or have a view further than the next 5 minutes. So from a technical point of view, I use a similar question now, but I ask about the tech industry. Where do you think the tech industry is going to be for the next 5 years?
Which is better.
Because it's more of an opinion on movement of the industry as a whole versus as an individual, movement. I am going to be in this job or that job. And I think in 2023, the only realistic answer to this in 5 years' time, I'm probably going to be 2.5 jobs down the road.
Yeah.
And that's not useful, really.
No, but that's accurate as well. So what would you ask?
Exactly.
I would probably bounce off that job at some point.
From an interviewer point of view, it's pointless. And from a candidate point of view, I don't know what a good response looks like.
No, and you can't really make up lies as well. I couldn't, because I wouldn't even believe them myself.
I suppose the only thing I can think is for some people, they may have, and this is a group of people may have a particular passion. Like, I'm starting as a junior and I have a real desire to become an X, like a technical architect or a this, and I'm working towards that, and I'm doing lots of courses and things, and I want to get experience in that area. So that's good. But I think that's less where do you see yourself in 5 years, and there's a more focused question around what are your career aspirations, what do you want to do for, what are your expectations of the job, maybe what kind of things do you want to do in the job. Because a lot of roles, although they're advertised as being very specific,
no, they never
certainly in the tech industry,
they are never like it's written. No.
You kind of do what happens to need to be done. So it's which is like 75% of the time not what was on the specs. Yeah, and I think then when you're hiring, you can say what you're really interested in, and it depends how the rest of the interview's framed, but for me, when I run technical interviews, if a lot of the rest of the interviews suggest they're actually much more interested in architecture, you can say, well, it seems from what you're saying, really your passion is in architecture, so is that kind of where you want to go? yes, it is fine. Well, we can support that, and that's kind of something cool. Or no, it isn't. Okay, well, obviously I misread it, so let's talk about what you're actually interested in.
I find that is quite scary as well, because it's hard to find a job that you're 100% passionate about, or even 1% passionate about, if we're being realistic. And then when you have an interviewer noticing that you might have other passions that may not go in the direction they want the job to go, you sort of thinking, if I say yes, are you just ditch me as a candidate, even though I can do the job?
That's fair. I think if I was, so obviously we're being less formal because this is just the informal round of the interview.
Sorry.
When we get to the written stuff part. But I think if I was an interviewer, I would frame it better. So I would say, look, the answer doesn't matter. It has no bearing on necessarily. It's just I'm interested in what you're genuinely interested in and what drives you.
I still wouldn't trust
But
you,
me,
but that's because I've been sitting in the interviewee's seat for too long that I just said so many interviewers who first don't know what they want, don't know what they want to ask and how to ask it, and then just picks completely random reasons to ditch you.
But I wouldn't ask that question in an interview anyway. I think it's a trash question. I
think if someone asked that, I'm just like, you've got a 1980s mindset now. I don't think I want to work for you. I don't think you should be working. I don't think you should be out facing people. You belong in a little cave.
Like I said, the nearest I might get to it is just if someone was, if you were talking more around career aspirations, like I've got a sort of a conversation headed that way, that's the nearest I'd get to it. But outside of that, I just go for the talk about the industry in 5 years or something.
Even careers of aspirations is just so vague, because the knowledge you have now about your sector may mean that you're more tempted in one direction, but then you might discover something else, or there might be a tech renewal and suddenly you just go, oh, actually I prefer another direction.
I think like maybe, in the industry I'm in, it's kind of, I've interviewed people who are going to go like maybe second line support roles, so they're partly talking on the phone to people, but they're also partly doing technical coding. And quite often people like that, either they've just graduated out from being on the phones all the time because they had a little bit more of a technical bent and that's what they're interested in, or because they want to become software engineers and that's the direction they're heading. And so I think for me, when I speak to people, it's useful to know that, because then you can also be honest about the role and say, look, if that's really where you want to go, the opportunities don't exist here. So if that's really desperately what you want to do, this wouldn't be the right job for you because you won't get that. Or I can make those opportunities happen if it's something you really want to do, but ultimately the role for the next few years is going to be that, so you need to be comfortable with that's what it is. Because I think when you interview, ultimately you're talking to a human being who obviously they want to be paid, but a lot of people want to go somewhere in their job, and you have to make sure you respectful of that and try and support them. And so some of that conversation can lead into that. I mean, for purely technical interviews where I do those, I probably wouldn't go into this whole territory anyway. But like if you're doing a broader kind of what they call a cultural fit, into business cultural fit interview, then maybe I'd go there. But
I've never found anyone asking me where I wanted to go and being genuine about I can help you get there.
But I think
if it was more, where do you see yourself in 5 years or in 3 years, and you better mention the keywords I've got on my list.
But I think when you talk about, we're talking earlier about passion and no one really has a passion for a role, that's one of the things I think as you get a bit more senior and you've done the job for a bit longer, that's one of the things genuinely you can be passionate about saying to someone, even just informally, like what they call a water cooler conversation, where you have a chat with someone and they say like, oh yeah, I really want to get into dev. It's like, well, how can I help you? Can I help you do that? Is it something you really want to do? Do you just want to try it because you think it's more interesting than what you're doing now? I have a lot of those kind of conversations with people where, we all get there, we're a little bit undecided about what we want to do. and you can say, well, I don't know, there's this opportunity, does that seem interesting, can I make this happen? I know that person, can you talk to them, would that help you? You know, it's a massive, well, certainly the tech industry is massive and it's growing, and this whole conversation around ChatGPT is going to put everyone out of business is rot. It's just, there's way too much work to do, and it just helps to deliver some of that work.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hurt you. It's not like you're competing. You're just lifting. A rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. So you may as well help people up.
I find in the marketing sector, there are still too many people who still come from the mindset of marketing and sales belonging together, and therefore it has to be cutthroat.
Because sales tends to be more competitive like that, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of marketing now has the opportunity to pretend to be competitive, because digital marketing has got a lot of data. Most of the people I talked to were completely unable to read them, or at least to understand the meaning of the few digits they were reading. But they were very pleased to quote those digits, and that would be pretty much their job. Like, I made a little chart out of the digits I just manually wrote down from Google Analytics. Here's my chart, and they're paid, and then they introduced that to the shareholders. It's just like, how much are you paid to do that?
Why aren't I paid?
Yeah, how is that a job? It's not reporting to the shareholders, just reading aloud numbers. We can all do that.
That's it. I mean, that's how you get the big money. I think,
basically, yeah.
So I think our answer to where do we want to be in 5 years' time,
I want to read numbers to shareholders.
is still talking about where we want to be in 5 years' time.